I'm not sure that I enjoyed that high level of applause, but I'll take it anyway, right? So my name is Nicole Holden. I'm the Bloomington City Clerk. I am also the 9th District Vice Chair for the Indiana Democratic Party. And I have for you all right now a confession. I skipped my therapy appointment this week, so instead of doing it with somebody that I'm paying, you guys get to do it for me for free. So I'm going to start by saying this. If you are an elected official anywhere in the 9th District, will you please raise your hand or stand up so people can see you? If you are a party official in the 9th District, anywhere in the 9th District, raise your hand or stand up so people can see you. If you are pissed off, if you are scared, if you are angry, if you want to see things change, please raise your hand. Okay, good, because I am all of those things all of the time, like all of the time. And I don't know what to do with myself anymore. I'm walking around and I'm enraged. Somebody said hi to me the other day and I wanted to punch him in the throat. I know. The time has come for us to start making some changes, and I know it is so hard. I'm shaking every single day, and it is hard. You know, there are about, and if I get the numbers wrong, somebody correct me later, but not right now. There are about 8,500 federal employees, or there were, in the 9th District in Indiana. These are our neighbors. These are the people we live with. These are the people we work with. These are the people who shop in our businesses and the people that we turn to when we need help. There is a freaking problem here when they are losing their jobs. And by the way, that hurts us too. They are passing bills to limit our property tax values. You know, that's not just what we're paying. That's going to hit our schools, our communities. We're not going to be able to have any economic development in our towns. There is a freaking problem. Every single county in the state, -1, and I still think that's a typo, is going to lose millions of dollars. Every single one. What are we doing? What do you want to do? It is not enough to just turn to the elected officials and say, go fix it. It's not enough to just turn to the state party chair, which we should all be working to make her the best chair that we have ever seen. Whatever she says she needs, please just do it, because we need that now. That time has come. I didn't practice that, but Karen, you can give me the check later. So anyway, my point is, it's not enough to just sit there and be like, oh, it's going to get taken care of. We have to do it. And I'm going to say this, and I know people don't necessarily like it, we need to get over ourselves a little bit. Come on. The petty disagreements that we have with each other, get over yourself. Mad at each other for doing the small things. Oh, you hurt my feelings. It's time for us to get over ourselves. And by the way, I'm telling this to myself too, because I have that problem. I'm not we're close to not being that person. The time has come to put our egos aside and just focus on the work. We all have the same main goals. We've talked about it up here. We all want a place to live. We want our kids to have good schools. We want our parents to have a place to age with dignity. Nobody's looking for a handout, but we just want to live free. I want to be able to walk down the street with my partner and hold her hand and not worried about somebody trying to deport us because we're queer. I want my daughters, who I raised in the 9th District, to worry about whether or not they can actually finish their education and work and buy a home if they choose to do so, just because our country that we love so very much doesn't always show that it loves us back. The time has come for all of us to step up and do the work. We are here. I'm scared, I'm pissed off, but I am really, really excited to see all of you here today. I hope that you know I will be there for you, and I hope that you will be there for me as well. That is what we're here for today. I know we have some questions that we want to share with Representative Houchin, who I will say has never responded directly to anything that I've sent to her, including when we send things from the city council and it's like, oh, this is what we passed. Yeah, we don't get those responses back. But we're here to ask questions. We're here to support. We're here to share, right? You know what? This is so much better than therapy. I like this. So anyway, we're here. I appreciate all of you coming out more than I could possibly say. If you need to reach me, my email is nicole@nicolebowling.com. I'm also, well, can't talk politics most of the time when I'm at work, but if you need me to, drag me out into the parking lot and we can talk about other stuff. So let me know. Thank you all for coming here. Thank you for letting me vent a little bit. I hope I get to hear you vent too, so I'm not alone. Thank you.
Bloomington, and give her a special extra hand because she helped arrange everything to make this happen. Before I turn things over to myself to give the questions that you've offered, I want to make a comment about a former congressman who lived in your community, Frank McCloskey. He was a fine gentleman, and this guy had a great ear to the ground. And I can't say this for sure, but I knew Frank pretty well, and I know some of you in this room did too. But I think if he was observing what is going on today, from the State House to the Capitol, I think he would narrow it down to some simple points. 60% of Americans right now can't afford a $400 emergency. Think about that. 60% of Americans cannot today afford a $400 emergency. We now have a president who promised what he would do on day one? Bring prices down. Wow, we haven't quite seen that yet, have we? They're going the opposite direction, aren't they? He's got everybody trying to guess what he's up to. Meantime, at your State House, Representative, are we going to see lower taxes for low-income and middle-aged earners in this state when this legislative session is over? Taxes are going up on even low-income earners if Mike Braun and the Republicans who have the supermajority in this state get their way. Taxes are going up on even the poorest people in our state. Take that a step further. If you've looked at President Trump's budget, everybody's going to pay more, well, except the top 1 or 2%. Low-income people are going to get hammered at the federal level as well. So while they're throwing all this stuff out there at you 10 or 20 times a day, they're distracting from what's really going on. Help educate your friends and neighbors, get them involved. We're going to give you several ways that you can get involved today before you walk out of here. Adam Dickey is my counterpart for the 9th District. I'm the 8th District Chair. I didn't mention that earlier, but Adam is your 9th District Chair. He's got a nice handout that's got some QR codes that can help you, so pick up that today if you haven't, and make sure you know who Adam is. We've got county chairs from throughout the district that would like to hear from you, so keep that in mind. We'll pass along some ways you can reach them. Stop by the table before you leave today. All right, let's get the questions going. Thanks for your patience. Let's start with the first one. What's the plan to educate, organize, and mobilize? Chairman Talia, would you take that first question?
Educate and mobilize, and what was the third one?
Organize.
Organize. Well, I just told you, we just need to build the machine. We need to fill every single precinct with a precinct person, a vice, and however many volunteers they can put together. Number two, this is like what I just said. We are going to help create message that will then be pushed out to all of you. Like I said, we're putting together a podcast. We've got people that will generate message. Sam is working on this. We've got other staff people working on this. And mobilize. That's your job. Okay? I can't get you out of bed on Saturday morning. You have to get yourselves out of bed. Mobilize is what we all need to do. And the way to do it is to be pissed off, to be angry, to have something worth fighting for, something worth getting out of bed on Saturday morning and coming out here. So that's my point.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to give this to Matt Pierce. Here's a question. How do you feel about President Trump invoking the 1807 Insurrection Act?
Yeah. this is the biggest problem of the whole thing. This is why I think we're in a big hole, is that, Congress created some extraordinary powers for the president in times of actual emergency or times of war. And he has taken all of those. And I believe he's illegally declared these emergencies. They don't fit what Congress thought in the statute. And our only hope is that the courts are going to step up, because in another time, you would have a Congress saying, wait a minute, we never delegated you this unilateral authority to just throw tariffs around every other day at your whim. That's our job. You can't be doing that. There would be pushback. But as we know, the Republicans who control Congress are unwilling to do any oversight, put any check and balance on this president. And so that's why it's
Raise your green card or red card if you agree with that statement. I don't know. Okay, I think it's all green. Go ahead, Representative.
Yeah, we need, because we don't have the legislative branch of government, Congress, actually asserting its authority to provide those checks and balances, that means it kind of falls on us as the people to try to create the checks and balances by raising enough of a ruckus that maybe people will think twice. I think the president one day said, I'll never back off from these tariffs. The next day it's a 90-minute or 90-day pause, right? So something got to him. So I think that the people, when the people can express, kind of get to that critical mass where you say, oh, this is a problem, then I think you have a shot at it. But this is my biggest frustration is, all these executive orders and all this unilateral stuff, deporting people, tariffs, the whole thing, it's all based on the premise that some kind of wartime emergency exists, and therefore the president gets to have extraordinary powers. And I'm hoping that these lawsuits will finally get to a point where the courts will say clearly, this is not an emergency. You have overstepped your bounds. You do not have these authorities. If you want to do this stuff, you got to go get Congress to pass a bill. Because you know that if there was a bill on the floor of the House and Senate saying, let's increase everybody's prices anywhere from 10 to 150%, how many of you think are going to vote for that? And if they did, how many do you think would be around after the next election? And so this is why the courts have to get there and force Congress to be back in the game.
What I found amazing about that topic, the president and the administration claims they can't go find the Venezuelan that was arrested by accident and find him in that prison. Well, hell, Governor Nolan went down there and took a picture right in the middle of all those prisoners. So if they could arrange for that, I think they can find that gentleman and bring him back. But we also learned too recently, the majority of those people transported there, there's no record of any criminal activity in our country. So that's also why this is a messed up plan.
Right.
So, all right, this one's for Thomas. And Thomas, I have to tell you, it's a pretty direct question. You go to run for public office again, and they added... We're not sure yet. I'll put the answer, okay. Who wants to answer this one? We seem to have a disconnect with our urban community members and with our communities of color. Therefore, these disconnects have resulted in lower voter turnout in these areas, and some have stayed home. How can our party do the work to regain the trust in these communities? Who wants to take a stab at that? Chairwoman?
Well, I can start, but anybody else can come in. I recently, like just last week, sat down with an analyst who told us, and this is a guy that I've worked with for years. I believe everything he says. He said that we had 345,000 lean Democrat, meaning in the van in the score, 70% or more lean Democrat, 345,000 people who did not show up. Now, big red card on that. So either our voter rolls are so screwed up that the numbers are wrong, which I don't believe. I believe that might be a small part of this. But people, just for some reason, stayed home. I'm trying to find out why. We are going to do some research this summer about why people stayed home. To me, it's just It's incomprehensible that we fight wars to be able to be a free country and to have that right to vote for our leaders, and that all these people just stay home. So I find that incomprehensible, and that's one of the next big pushes. Once we identify where all these people are, next year, the big push is going to be get out the vote. And for that, we have to rebuild the machine.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that's so frustrating to me is Indiana is way down at the bottom on voter turnout. You know, I think West Virginia might be worse than us, but we are like 49, 50 right down there somewhere. And, you know, these super majorities, you know, they have a lot of structural advantages they've created for themselves, right? They've gerrymandered districts. They have 3, 4, well, the money we know about, they're at least probably 4 or 5 times the amount of money for campaigns. That's not even counting the dark money you can't see that I know is swishing around in their back rooms. And so they have a lot of structural advantages. That means that we have to get the people out, and they're just, you know, half the people are not participating. And so we do have to kind of figure out why is that. And in the meantime, the legislature keeps trying to do everything they can to make it harder for constituencies they fear to vote. So what are they doing this session? Right now, you can use your student ID at places like IU, Purdue, to vote and for that voter ID, and they're going to eliminate that. They have a specific exclusion for student IDs because they just don't want those people voting. And, you know, you can go and look at the debate on the floor where I'm questioning the author of that provision. And he couldn't answer the first question about it because they couldn't admit what they're really doing. And they would make up all these kind of side excuses, and I'd kind of chase them down that rabbit hole, prove to him that that didn't make any sense, and then he'd go over here and I'd prove it didn't make sense. And it's just a shameless attempt to build even more structural advantages. And so one of the things that's going to happen is we have to get people engaged so they want to vote, and then sadly, we're probably going to have to really help them, push them to fight through some of the barriers that are being developed. So students may have to go get another ID just to be able to vote. And we have to make sure they know how to do that, and we can help them do that. And then, you know, even registration, and keep kind of adding little things here or there to try to trip you up on that. And so we're going to have to really put a lot of effort into making sure that people get through all the kind of Rube Goldberg machine they're creating now just to get registered to vote and be able to vote on when the election comes.
I just want to say, Matt Pierce did a great job on that in the House. He did.
So I'd like to come back to the root of the question, which is how we're going to turn out minority groups in particular. I'm not going to discount from what you said, but really what we're talking about is getting more people of color who are active in the party and who are turning out to vote. So, and I wanted to underscore a couple of things. One, it's not enough to mobilize. You have to go to where people are. You can't expect them to show up to you every single time. I'm looking around this room, and you don't know that Bloomington is like, what, maybe 3% black? I think we're running about that for this room today, which is impressive because usually you don't get any black people in the room. And I say that pretty comfortably because I'm usually the one. But the narratives about black people not turning out to vote and everything else, they've actually done surveys that are filled out by black people. And it's misinformed. And it's untrue. Black people do want to vote. They do turn out to vote. They do so all the time. They are movable. You can ask them the questions and they will come to those particular issues. The majority of black people are satisfied with where we're going as a Democratic Party, but the demographic shift that you're seeing is not necessarily a white-black demographic, it's actually among age cohorts. So part of what we do need to come, and that's coming back to what Rev. Pierce was saying, is we actually need to be reaching out to our young people because they are becoming disenchanted with the way that we are going as a whole, as a country, and as a party structure. They are questioning whether or not they are actually going to achieve the goals that they want to achieve, because we are not actually talking to them and we're not answering their questions. We're not actually showing them the facts that will get them to where they need to go. They are less inclined to do so. If you want to reach out to communities of color, go.
To communities of color, yeah.
To communities of color. If you want to see more people turning out to vote, start doing things that will make them come and listen to you. By the way, I'm looking at the Democratic Party website from time to time. Do we have it translated? I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot here, but do we have it translated into Spanish or any other things? That is an easy, easy fix. Have it translated to another language. And then you will actually get more Latino voters who only or primarily speak in Spanish. There are Burmese communities, we could be reaching out to them as well. We have tools at our disposal. Yes, it always costs money to do these things. I'm not saying it isn't. But go to where people are and actually make the effort. And don't ignore the questions. And it can be uncomfortable. I know when people talk about things that you are not familiar with, sit in the discomfort, understand what it means, and move forward.
Come on, Clark. Come on, Clark. Come on, Madam Clerk.
I'll even like add to that, not that I'm a minority or any white person in rural Indiana is, but when you're a Democrat in a rural area, you sure feel like a second-class citizen at times. But some of the same things she said about trying to target our friends in communities that we did have low turnout, we've got similar issues in rural areas where Democrats don't even want to go vote because we didn't even put people on the ticket, okay? So you've got to help us find people that not only want to vote Democrat, we need your help in finding people that want to be precinct people, precinct committee members. I've got some counties, we've realized in the past couple of years, we don't even have a full slate of precinct committee people. If you want to get involved, you may become a precinct person before Memorial Day. Who knows? Who we need your help on the ground.
And I do want to correct that because you're talking about low turnout. What was the percentage for black women? Can somebody know that?
92%! 92%!
The problem is not low voter turnout amongst communities of color. Actually, it's coming out to, well, white people. And the Democratic Party has been using white people for a long time. So talk to your family. Talk to your friends.
And we've also lost some people that we shouldn't have lost because we didn't get that message through to them this past election. So I take your point very well.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I want to go
Can I
to the
add a couple
council.
things to that?
Can-
I want to add a couple of things
Wait,
to that
that's good.
question, which was about connecting with communities, because when I was campaigning a couple of years ago, one of the interactions that stood out to me was an interaction in a parking lot at an apartment complex with two people who they weren't on my knock list, they were just in the parking lot, and I was like, are you voting? And they were just disenchanted. They were two black men, actually, who were completely disenchanted. Clerk Bolden used that word. It's a great word, who just, like, nobody serves me, it really doesn't matter. And I think one of the things that people need to remember is it really does matter, and it especially matters if we do it in force together. And I think one way to engage people, generally speaking, is to not necessarily say like, oh, I want to engage you in voting. It's engaging in other things, and then that people care about. They're more universal than politics, and that then you can draw those connections and go, oh, thanks so much for helping volunteer at Community Kitchen. Now let's talk about the federal and state dollars involved in helping Community Kitchen run. And you draw those connections for people, and all of a sudden they go, oh, maybe there is actually a purpose for this going to the polls thing. And it's really important to draw those connections. And I know that sometimes for me personally, it's like, oh, like I don't want to brag on myself, or I don't want to like talk about those things that like I did because I just want to be like humble in this space and do the work. But I think at some point we have to stop being quite so humble and say like, hey, we made these things happen for this benefit of community. And otherwise people don't realize those connections. And the other thing that I want to just encourage everybody to do, the light of, you know, like the anger that everybody feels, right, and this upset and this frustration, is also remember to engage in those things that are good. And I'm going to call out the Bloomington Parks Department right now, which is going through a master planning process, and I was at a work session with the park commissioners on Thursday night, and it was such a lift to me personally, to my whole mentality, to just be engaged in talking about play for 2 hours. And I'm a former, you know, park and rec professional, right? And that is just, sometimes we have to remember to engage in those things that we love, and hopefully, you know, at the same time, and those things might be helping our community in different ways, but helping ourselves and feeding ourselves is also another way that we need to help our community, and we need to remember to do that and bring other people into those areas that give us hope and give us enjoyment and give us love for each other.
You know, one thing that should bring us together that shouldn't be partisan would be healthcare. But when 217 House Republicans voted for Donald Trump's tax cuts, they pretty much supported cuts to Medicaid, cuts to nutritional assistance for children and families, cuts to veterans programs, all in service of massive tax breaks for their billionaire donors and wealthy corporations. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office confirmed Donald Trump's tax scam will result in severe cuts to Medicaid. And if Republicans have their way, 22 million Americans could get kicked off their health care plan. Children will lose health care coverage. Nursing homes will close in rural areas. Rural hospitals will shutter, and all to give about $1 trillion in handouts to the richest 1%. Who wants to start with that? Chairwoman Italian, what can we do to tackle this since Congressman Houchin doesn't appear, she wants to hear the criticism to this tax scam bill that they're pushing through the House and Senate?
I have not one good thing to say about any of that crap. So, organize, educate, mobilize, that's the answer. We have to make our voices loud, strong, and unified. I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, I cannot defend anything. And it's going, as Matt Pierce said, it's going to trickle down to Indiana soon. We're about to pass a state budget that's going to reflect all of those cuts. Organize, build a machine, mobilize, and direct your anger.
And you get this at the State House all the time, and I can remember some times when we'd be in the horseshoe up there where we'd have offices with 3 or 4 reps in the same area. I had to hear a former colleague, Representative Bischoff, I'll bring his name up, won't mean my nuts to these folks, but you'd be amazed. Wow, Percy, are you getting calls on HB 1202? And he was just like kind of freaking out. I'm not trying to pick on Bob, but he got 4 phone calls from constituents, and that got his attention. Do not underestimate what a bunch of emails and phone calls will do. It will not be
Yeah, I think that's definitely right. I think people really underestimate how sensitive elected officials are when they start, you know, hearing from people. And I think kind of going back to our last question about turnout and things, I think, you know, the thing that disheartens me more than anything is when I hear this a lot, when I hear a person say, oh, my vote doesn't matter because all your politicians are the same and, you know, both parties, nothing ever changes, so I'm like, just check out of this thing. And I think part of that is because the media world has changed so much. You know, when I first started in politics, if you got a front page story on a local newspaper, everybody in town knew about it and a lot of them talked about it. And you could get the message out fairly easily if you were able to get some coverage. And now, as we know, you know, newspapers are really struggling. People are basically, you know, mostly clicking on clickbait. And they're in the social media kind of role, or they're very channeled in kind of their own ideological media. And so one of the things that we have to figure out how to do as we're talking about outreach and getting people involved is to be able to credibly explain to them who's on which side on these things, right? Because it's a very stark contrast, right? Your priority is either making sure the wealthiest Americans can continue to have their tax cuts and that they don't have to pay their fair share, or you can be all about how do we make sure we can continue helping and uplifting the least fortunate in society and make sure the middle class doesn't sink any lower than it does now. I mean, it's a very clear distinction, and I can tell you which party's on which side. But I think a lot of people out there who don't spend a lot of time like we do, or are not involved in the process, they don't get that information. They just know that, like, my life is not working for me. And I don't see what is the light, where is the light at the end of the tunnel? I'm not seeing it. And so I think that's one of our hardest things to do to get people re-engaged and understand who's actually for them or against them. Because one of the things I see done very effectively at the State House is the Republicans love the culture wars. They love to get off on these crazy issues that don't even exist. They make them up. Because it's easy to get people really angry. You know, because it's like the shining object over here. So while we're getting all freaked out about this big social culture war issue, all these economic things are happening to us and we don't even pay attention to them or notice them because we're all fixated on this thing over here. And that's something that I think, as a Democrat, just as a legislator, I'm always kind of thinking, like, we got to find a better way to fight through this, because what happens is they bring up the culture war thing. We say, there they go again, they're attacking a marginalized community. We have an obligation to go defend them, right? So then we go and defend them, and then you hear, how come you Democrats only care about these weird culture wars? It's like that. The Republicans are genius at that, and we have to figure out a way to defend the marginalized communities without making it look like we're the one creating this strange agenda. We're just responding to what they're doing. Maybe that means we have to have a better, more proactive agenda to try to push back on that. But something's got to get
I'm going to add one thing. I love that. Thank you, by the way. Also, I love watching you on the State House. I'm not one of those people who's sitting on the floor. I'm not one of those people who's sitting there and texting you.
Huh? Who does that?
But I watch and I'm like, thank goodness we have them fighting for us at the State House. But the thing that strikes me, and I learned it from actually Councilmember Stossberg last year, we were having some discussion. She said, I need more information. I need numbers. And when we're talking about Medicare cuts, that's 20% of Hoosiers, roughly. There are like 7 million people in the state, just under. Roughly 20%. It's 1 in 5 of us. We should be talking about that as an organization. We should be talking about what we need in real life experience. We're getting older. We need help. And what kind of people are we? We leave our people to not have health care and to die. It's crap.
And then attaching stories to those numbers. I was at the State House a couple weeks ago for the Medicaid Day of Action, and I was there with a couple. I'm going to get teared up talking about it. He works full-time, overtime to provide. They've got a medically complex child. He has to take, on a not insignificant basis, 8 hours a day to be on the phone to maintain eligibility. He was talking to one of the legislative aides saying, my family would be better off financially, it'd be easier for us to get Medicaid if my wife and I divorced. Tell me how that's pro-family. Right. And I think we have to do a better job, and this is what we can do. In our spheres of influence, our social media channels, we can amplify the stories of the people who are being affected by these things. Because I think people don't know. They turn on whatever news source they watch, and they hear all of these lies. We can help change the narrative by amplifying the stories of the people who are being affected. Because I think when most people hear that, I don't know most diehard Republican in my life would hear that story and say, well, I think that's what you deserve, right? I think they hear this and say, oh my God, I didn't know that that's how it works, right? And I think if we can get those stories out there attached to the numbers, stories are what change people's minds and help people understand what's really going on.
Thank you for that, because it just reminded me of something. We are going to be rolling out a new program. It's called Soapbox, and this came from a friend of mine who does this for a living. He's from Montana. But the deal is that we collect stories. I will collect stories today. Sam, Dana, all of us will collect stories. If you have a story about how your grandmother had to drive 50 miles to the Social Security office just to change her address because we no longer have, online services. If you have a story like that you can tell me in 2 or 3 minutes, talk to me when this is done.
And since you mentioned Social Security, one of our questions.
Can I add
Oh, sure, go ahead.
a little local number to that? Because food was mentioned as part of that, and you could definitely argue food is medicine. And when that question was asked, I was reminded of a Herald Times headline from earlier this week. Federal funding, Hoosier Hills Food Bank won't receive 62,000 pounds of food. So between now and July, that is a very specific local impact here in Bloomington, Monroe County, and also some surrounding areas too, because Hoosier Hills Food Bank serves a region because of the cancellation of the USDA's Emergency Food Assistance Program. And at the same time, there are more people in need of food assistance. And those numbers are just devastating, and I appreciate that Clerk Holden remembered that conversation last year about my asking for data and numbers. Another part of my history is as a high school math teacher. And it's really, it's one of those moments of continued frustration at the lack of not just math education or math competency, but also the attitude that we bring to that. Oh my gosh, people see a pie chart and they like freak out, right? Like you see percentages and you go, oh, like percentage, somebody knows more than me. So like I'm gonna like respect that percentage on that chart, even if it's crap. Okay, so I'm going to beg you all to watch your reaction whenever anybody talks about math or struggling at math. Don't just say, oh, I'm really bad at that, because that is not an inbred skill, it's a learned skill, and it's something that you can always get better at. And as Representative here said, I mean, they're talking about these culture wars and they're doing this economic stuff that they hope nobody's paying attention to, in part because they hope nobody understands it. And it is easier to understand than you think it is, but you have to approach it with a mindset that's different. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I want to keep on the Social Security subject because we did have a question or two on this, but kind of have to point out how out of touch our Republican friends are. For example, Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, he's a billionaire. He's worth about $3 billion, and I thought it was kind of hilarious the other day that when they were talking about Elon Musk finding all these problems with Social Security checks, and he said that his mother, if she missed a month of her check, she probably wouldn't think much of it. Well, I guess if your son has $3 billion, I wouldn't be too worried about my Social Security check either. But for the rest of those who depend on that check each and every month, what should a person do if it doesn't show up one week? And Representative Houchin, if you were here, we'd love to ask you not just that question, but how about this question? If Elon Musk is so damn accurate about finding all this fraud and abuse, and we've got this new great Department of Justice, where in the hell is all the indictments and charges against all these people with illegal Social Security checks? I'd like to run out to a mug shot instead of all these people we threw on the plane in El Salvador. Let's show where these criminals are at. But anyway, who wants to try to answer any of this?
I'll just jump in and say that's part of the biggest problem is just the gaslighting, because they just want to cut government. They don't think these programs are important that help people, and they want to get rid of them. They want to roll back the Great Society and the New Deal, right? But they know if they really come out and say that, people are like, well, I kind of like Social Security from Franklin Roosevelt. I'm glad he did that, right? So what do they have to say? Oh, we have all these undocumented immigrants who are getting Social Security. We have 150-year-olds getting Social Security, and they would make you think that the entire federal government is just one big, cesspool of fraud, and it's not. I mean, it's a big enterprise. Of course, there's going to be some fraud involved, and you have to have the checks and balances in place to try to root that out. But they're trying to make you believe that it's like just completely systemic. And therefore, it's fine to cut all those things, because all you're going to cut are the fraudsters, right? If they talk about the people that are actually going to harm that depend upon those programs, that's a harder sell to make. And so I think that's, again, another part of the job we have is how to fight through, whether it's through social media or wherever. There's just constant flood of lies that come out about the state of things and how much money is out there. I mean, why did they pick their $1 trillion number or whatever about how much fraud they're going to and savings they're going to find? It's because that's the number they need for the tax cuts, right? So they gotta like link that up. And I also noticed interesting too. Yesterday, I heard the Senator Mishler, who chairs the Senate Appropriations Committee at the State House on the state level. They just passed their budget out of committee, and I noticed that they don't talk about budget cuts anymore. They talk about efficiencies. So you'll be pleased to know that our budget has many efficiencies. So look forward to those efficiencies.
Sure, Italian.
So I was just going to say that at the end of the Biden administration, a couple of years ago, he commissioned former governor of Maryland, Martin O'Malley, to come in to the Social Security Administration and revise all of the customer service, if you will. Make things more efficient, make things more workable. He was in that job, he did that for about 2 years. About the end of November of '24, they finally finished all of this project. They had, everybody could do almost everything online. It was extremely efficient, and when they had call-ins, they were proud to announce that they were like down to a 2-minute wait. I'm struggling not to swear, but they came in with the chainsaw and just tore it all apart. They had no reason to do that except vendetta. They had no reason to undo all the changes and efficiencies that they had just built into the system, and I texted Martin O'Malley, I said, you must just be sick to your stomach. And he said, yeah. They had no reason.
I want to touch on the Trump tariffs because it's going to cause disruption. We've already seen that for 10 days, but I did some research of my own. You know, we've got a $900 billion trade deficit. And we're always going to have a deficit with some countries because I don't care what he says, Vietnam's not going to spend as much with us as we're going to spend with them. That's just not possible. Their people don't have those kind of dollars to buy our stuff, but we're going to probably buy a lot of their things when it comes to shrimp and things like it. But I put this on my Facebook the other day. The president is focused on a $900 billion trade deficit. His moves has cost the stock market $11 trillion so far. Some of it's coming back, but not all of it. Can you see how this guy bankrupted his own casinos? I mean, that's the kind of math this guy uses. I mean, he's not a deep thinker. He just likes to make deals, right? Tim O'Neill once said all politics are local. Unfortunately, now all politics are national. And I want to touch with the council person right now from Bloomington. How do you deal with the fact that you hear from people all day long, you don't know if they're a Democrat or Republican, they've just got a problem. What kind of calls and feedback do you give people that really make them motivated to reach out to a city council person and say, hey, I've got a problem? Give us an example of what you typically hear from people in your community.
That's one that I wasn't necessarily prepared for this morning. So let's see, most recently, let's see, I've got...
We'll go back to tariffs too in a second.
Yeah, I was like, this is not related to tariffs. I got one this week related to road infrastructure, actually a couple this week related to road infrastructure, and specifically like related to safety of road infrastructure. Actually, there's somebody in the audience who also complained to me about this, but it was much longer ago, about a specific road and their bike lanes and how challenging it is to traverse that particular connection. So there's that kind of small stuff, and one of the interesting parts about that you can connect larger is you can go, wow, there's an awful lot of federal and state dollars involved in road infrastructure. And recently we passed the Safe Streets for All plan, right? We're trying to reduce fatalities and serious injury crashes in Bloomington. And my husband actually has done a lot of like analysis and like mapping analysis on this. And actually the city of Bloomington has a great, or Monroe County in general has a great crash data board, or crash map and data collection right now online. And some of the most unsafe roads and intersections within Bloomington are actually state-controlled roads. So it's one of those things that it can't be local dollars, it has to be state dollars, and our peers just said that half of the state dollars come from federal dollars, right? And so you have all of this trickle-down effect. And so that's one of the things that's like, well, I can listen to you, and I can say, yes, I absolutely agree, and then I can go, I don't know where we're gonna find the funding for that, because there's also these other projects that are in similar situations. So I get things like that.
So nobody called you about tariffs this week or last week?
Nobody called me about tariffs this week or last week. People did also inquire, generally speaking, like, I don't know if I can make rent next month. What do I do? Like, what kind of resources do I have? Or what kind of resources does the city have? And sometimes the answer, I mean, the answer is often like directing to other things, because I personally, like, I don't have any control of any of that, like individual programmatic money, right? I may approve a budget at some point that distributes money into these places, but if you actually need that assistance, you have to go to another department in order to do that, right? You have to go and apply to a trustee, you have to go to the social service agency that receives like grant money, you have to go to the HAND department who manages that. We get various complaints about rental situations and like unsafe rentals, or their landlord isn't like maintaining their property, and what do we do about that? And that's just like, that's staff. That's like, here you go, here's the staff person that you can help with that. And it's totally fine that community members go, I'm gonna reach out to my elected official instead of trying to navigate the city website and figure out what staff person is in charge of this. Because it's really challenging sometimes as an individual resident to go, I don't even know what department this is. Like, I don't know who to complain to about this. I just know that it's a problem.
I'm just glad you're getting calls about local problems. That's still what a council person is supposed to get,
We
right?
get emails about local problems all the time.
Now, Representative Pierce, have you had any feedback from anyone in your district concerned about the tariff issue?
I've never had someone talk to me about the trade imbalance, I will admit that. They're a lot more concerned about what is gonna happen to my health care. That's probably the big thing I hear. And, just these everyday kind of cost of living issues, how am I gonna get my kid through school, that kind of thing. And so, and that's where, I use the word stupidity when we open up here, and it's like, I'm not a big economist or anything. I'm sure I have a lot to learn, but I know that if you have an island full of penguins, they're not going to buy a lot of cars and steal from you. So why do we slap a tariff on those penguins? That right there just shows the incompetence of the whole situation, and just the idea of the fact that there are certain products we can't produce. I don't think we grow a lot of coffee or bananas around here, and so you're going to have to buy them from another country. So you're going to be some situations where you're going to have some imbalances. And so, I just have concluded that our president is so bent toward authoritarianism. Anything that just can reinforce his power, to build his ego. If he can make 70 countries all call him up and say, oh gee, could we please have a discussion to see if we could have an agreement? I think for an authoritarian, that's the most awesome thing. And everybody calling you, and that with one tweet, you can move the stock market, right? To me, I think it's as simple as that. And until Congress steps up and says, we are not going to let you have this power on your own to move a market with some tweet, they've got to step up. And you know what? If they don't step up, we got to elect people in a year and a half that will step up. That's the bottom line.
All right, gerrymandering. There's a lot of people that are concerned that in Indiana, obviously, the majority party, the Republicans, control the map writing process. Matt, you've been involved in this several times. Is there anything we can do next time around when the maps come up, even if they're still on a supermajority status, to make this a little bit more fair and hopefully not draw us into the oblivion forever? It just seems like we're not having some good, well-balanced maps, at least, to give us a chance to have a two-party system in this state right now.
Yeah, I think we just have to be continuing pushing now, even though the next round of map drawing is a ways away. But we have to keep bringing the issue up over and over again, because the truth is, it's pretty difficult in human nature. If you've got someone who has power and they can maintain their power because they have the ability to draw the maps in a way that advantage their party, then it's awfully hard to get them on their own to do that. So they have to have some kind of external pressure. So, for example, we had a resolution come through the House, and it passed the Senate as well, calling for a constitutional convention to get together and apply term limits to Congress. And I had an amendment that said, well, if you're really worried about people actually being responsive to the people, you might want to end gerrymandering of congressional districts. So let's have a constitutional. That said, let's add into the list of things for the convention to do is to pass a constitutional amendment prohibiting gerrymandering, and they weren't interested. So we just have to keep working.
Sure, Talia.
I've also been complaining about this now for 2 rounds. I was there in 2010, was there in 2020, and the Democratic Party never challenged it. We just sat down. We just sat down and took it because, oh, what are we going to do? We had groups together at one point to challenge the 2020 maps. We were putting the band together, right? We were putting the group back together to do that. The Supreme Court came out with the, oh, it's not our problem. Go back to the states. I have always said that if I sat in this seat, there will be a gerrymandering lawsuit. There will be. We've got a group together right now. There have been successful gerrymandering lawsuits since that Supreme Court case. The Brennan Center for Justice in Washington, D.C. has piles of information about this and attorneys who are willing to help work on these suits. So it's not going to happen this week, but I'm working on it.
All right. I think another thing that we need to remember to think about, and I'm going to bring us around to something that was said earlier, is that yeah, we're gerrymandered for a while, but that does not mean that there cannot be competition on election tickets. And it is intimidating, as somebody new to this arena, I'll say it is intimidating to file to run in an election. It is scary. It's like, what do you do? How does this work? What steps do you take? I'll tell you it's possible, and it feels more intimidating before you do it than after you've actually done it. So I encourage all of you out there in Monroe County, in terms of Democrat, that's not as much of an issue, but it's not very far away from our county borders that it becomes an issue with who is on the ballot, how many people are on the ballot, and even if you don't win, you still have gotten a platform out, and you still have gotten some hope into those Democrats that are in those counties to participate.
Absolutely.
I just want to add one last thing because Chair Talion touched on it briefly. She was talking about 2010 and 2020 in terms of when we did the redistricting. You all know this is based off of our census. So we have 5 years to get our stuff together. I'm also having the trouble not cursing today. John, your daughter's heard bad words before, right? Just make sure. So anyway, we've got a few years to get our stuff together and maybe chip away at some of that supermajority so that when the time comes for the census data, we actually have more strength and more voice in the gerrymandering. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful if what really happened in 2030 is that we didn't have to sue them, we just had control? I know that is a big, big heavy lift, probably, you know, much harder than the numbers really support right now in my head, but we have a chance, and if we're focused in on that and really getting to that space, we might do it. Or maybe it won't be 2030, maybe it'll be 2040, which will suck. But we can still do the work to get to that place. That I know, I just want to say that.
I just want to add to that though, but for those here thinking about what can we do, you know, Trump was out for 4 years and you heard about Project 2025. They really did spend the last 4 years figuring out, here's what we're going to do if we get control again. And man, they're off to the races. What we've got to do is not only get people interested again, neighbors, friends, family, register them to vote, but think about what happened in 1974, folks, when we all figured out that Richard Nixon really was a crook, okay? And that even we had members of both parties go to him and say, you're going to have to leave or we're going to remove you from office. He did the right thing and left, right? And then the voters did the right thing in the next election. They kicked Republicans out of the Congress. We took over the House. We took over the Senate. We sent a strong message. And I'm sure before that happened, a year prior, they would have thought, oh, we've got no chance of winning in some of these districts. Folks, you can't win in a district if you don't go vote, let alone have a candidate. We've got to find candidates and we've got to get people mobilized to go vote. And I believe next year we're going to have a heck of a year. We'll give you some call to action points to help, to tell you how you can help us make 2026 a great year. Thomas?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll add to that. It's scary to run, but it's a great experience. So, you know, put your name out there, do it, gives you a great opportunity. Once again, the overwhelm is the point, right? They want us to feel like there's nothing that we can do. And so we reject that and take a knee if we need to, but we keep finding we have more power than we realize. And I have one closing remark. We just say, over the next year and a half to 3.5 years, there are going to be people who are going to have buyer remorse. Who are going to say, you know what, I think I made a mistake. This is not what I voted for. And I think we have a real opportunity in this time to open our doors and our hearts to welcome people in and say, listen, we're not here to rub your face in what you got wrong, but there is a chance you can be a part of the solution. And I think if we do that, we have a real chance, gerrymandered or not, to bring people together, to have a real people-powered movement that says we deserve better and we can fight for the future that we all have in common. But that's going to start with us being willing to set aside our pride, you know, set aside the, I want you to find out because you, I can't say that word. And say, there's room at the table for you, and we're for you too. And I think if we do that, and if we open up our homes, our hearts, our space to people who say, you know what, I think I made a mistake, we have a real chance to turn things around. I don't think that we are past the point of no return yet. And I think we have more power than we realize. I think they know we have more power than we realize, which is why they want us to be overwhelmed. So grateful for everybody here for showing up.
We've got time for one more question, and I want to zone in on property taxes because conference committee time is going to be coming up here in the next few days. There's going to be this secret plan to raise taxes in Indiana that we're not going to find out about until that paperwork comes to the floor. What should Hoosiers know about the property tax plan right now, and what should they do if they want to give their 2 cents to Governor Braun and the supermajority Republicans?
Right, well, my understanding is the Senate is going to attempt to vote to concur, basically just accept the version that passed the House, and you can go way down the weeds in the thing, but I think the simplest way to put it is it's a shell game, because what the General Assembly is doing is saying, like, look at us, we're the heroes, we just cut your property taxes maybe $200 or $300, and then you get into it, it's like, not everybody, but more importantly, they basically are taking a big chunk out of the budgets of local government to do that. And so what's the solution for them? Oh, local governments, you can just raise your income tax. And we'll let you raise it some more than you otherwise would be able to. And so it's such a cynical thing. They're going to say, like, look at us, we cut your property taxes, And then over the next year, these local governments are going to increase your income tax, and they're going to be the horrible people who can't be efficient. And they are the ones who raise your taxes. Well, look at us in the General Assembly, we're the heroes who cut your taxes. And it's very cynical. And, the spin meisters will be at work on that one, believe me.
Any advice on what they should do to try to get through some of these
Right now,
legislators?
we're focusing on the Senate, and, I've talked about this before. I'm sure that Senator Yoder is kind of up on this and gets it. We've talked about it, so you don't really have to lobby her hard on this and do the right thing. But if you have friends and neighbors that live in surrounding Senate districts, if you know people in Bedford, Martinsville, Spencer, surrounding communities, you got family members or friends, way upstate somewhere, see if you can get them to get engaged and to call as well. Because if we can get that kind of feedback from constituents, particularly in Republican Senate districts coming up for this concurrence vote, that would be, I think, what we need to do. So we have to figure out a way to take our Bloomington energy and move it out into the countryside.
I also want to add to that, I would be remiss, local governments just got mentioned, and maybe then the possibility of local governments kind of being forced to increase income taxes. But the other local entity that is really getting screwed are your public schools. Screwed. I think the total was NCCSD would be expected to lose $17 million. $17 million over the next 3 years, I believe, with the plan the way it is. And school districts don't necessarily have an option to acquire funds from other places. And so another thing that should absolutely be a talking point, the majority of our children here in Indiana get educated in public schools. And we need to support our public schools in every way that we possibly can. Because I think no matter what happens, specifically with that bill, and there's other ones that are also very detrimental to public education coming through the State House right now. And we need to support them at the local level in the ways that we can, and that may not be monetarily, it may literally just be saying, we love our public schools. And remembering that our public schools help shape our community, and we want an educated populace. An educated populace. An educated populace has positive trickle-down effects in everything, every single piece of life. If you have some measure of compassion and understanding about the world and all of those things, it trickles down through economics, through job development, through being a good neighbor, through civic engagement, all of those things. And we want everybody to have that certain level of education. It decreases crime, it increases engagement, it's amazing. So we need to support our public schools right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Two last minute things before we wrap this up. There's so many ways you can get involved. And I know we didn't get to all the questions. We'd be here another hour and a half if we did, so I apologize for that. But notice the QR code if you can help the state party out, we need you. And what the chairwoman said earlier, a lot of our county chairs do this too. 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 bucks a month, whatever you can afford. That will greatly help us with the resources we need to do the kind of work that needs to be done in this state. Other QR codes we've got available, I'm going to let Adam Dickey talk about this in just a second, but one of the QR codes will allow you to simply take your phone and it'll help you contact 5 different congressmen or senators, and boom, you can call them and give your opinion. It's a lot simpler than you might think. It takes only a few minutes. We can tell you more about it after this meeting concludes here in a moment if you want to ask about that. You can sound off in local media. Letters to the editors, to your newspapers still work. So if you want to help us from that standpoint, please let us know. At the back table, you want to learn more about becoming a candidate for office? We can help you. We've even got training. We're going to have training this summer for candidates who want to run for office. So stop by and see Dana in the back, our executive director. She does a great job. She can help you look at ways for you to get more involved. So you don't have to run for office, but if it's in your heart and you want to do it, we need you in 2026 more than we've ever needed you. But if you just want to make phone calls, if you want to go door to door, there's a job for everyone. And this is the kind of mobility that we're talking about if we're going to be successful next year and to get the state turned around. Adam Dickey, Chairperson, Chairman, would you give us another big update on an event that your constituents in the district should be aware of?
Yeah, so one of the questions that I don't think was able to be gotten to was, is there an opportunity for us to take this message directly to Erin? Congressman Houchin has one congressional office. Some of you who remember Barron Hill and Lee Hamilton know that we have a few more. Has one congressional office. She moved it all the way to be close to her in Salem, Indiana. Wow. We have an event coming up on the 24th that is a joint event. District, local party, some supporting organizations are helping out what they call, Hearing Hoosier Voices. We'll be sharing this on the district. We'll be sharing this with local parties as well. But it's Thursday, April 24th, 6 p.m. Doors open at 5:30. It's at the American Legion Post, number 41, 105 West Hughes Veteran Drive, Salem, Indiana. We have a great MC for this, Ms. Dana Black. And we're going to be basically taking the message to Erin and the Republicans. Now, I'm going to tell you, this is also being scheduled at an opportune time because they have another guest coming to Salem that night. Our Lieutenant Governor will be joining a Republican event. Little Micah will be there. So this is an opportunity for you not just to make sure that we register some grievances with our Congresswoman, but to also maybe register some grievances with our state government as well. So come on out, be part of this. We'll get more information out this week on this event, but we will have plenty of more if you can't make this one. This is going to continue all summer long.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, and that's true. We've got a group that goes to Todd Young's office as well. The chamber here in town is going to be doing some events.
They're having an event at the Chamber of Commerce is having an event at the Convention Center around lunchtime, where Senator Todd Young will be attending and participating. So if you have time, you can go. It's on Tuesday, April 15th.
The cards are back there, actually, guys. If you need a card and you want to be helpful with that, we've got cards back there on the event. Good catch. Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman Dickey. Appreciate that. A couple other things. Next Saturday, I was asked if some of you folks might show up for the 5501 protest. There's going to be one at the State House. So if you can be there for that, we'd love to have you. And of course, we want to help that group. There's also a hearing coming up on Thursday from 1 to 4 at the Monroe County Convention Center. It's the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, and they're having a hearing on Duke Energy's proposed gas-powered plants. Apparently, Duke wants to build a couple of more plants, and instead of using renewable options, so if you want to go give your opinion and learn more, that'll be 1 to 4 Thursday, April 17th at the break room at Monroe County Convention Center. Look for this handout on your seat if you would like to know more. We want to thank everyone for coming out today. First of all, let's thank City Clerk Nicole Bolton.
Yeah!
Turn Left podcast from Dana Black. Look for that, and you can watch what we've just seen here today.
And we shared it
Thank you, and let's vote. What's that?
We shared it on our Facebook page.
And we shared it on the Indiana Democratic Party Facebook page. By the way, Indiana Democratic Party is on Facebook, okay? If you're not liking us now, be sure to do that. Also, the 8th and 9th districts, we have Facebook pages. And of course, indims.org, our website. Watch for it to get better, right, Chairwoman? And Nicole?
One more thing, if y'all need me for fresh vegetables or flowers or snacks, the farmer's market is concluding over the next 20 minutes. Please go out there and support our local farmers. Appreciate it.
And I got one more thing today. Walter Mondale said it best. A working person voting for Republican is like a chicken voting for Colonel Sanders.
Indiana's all better black. Always coming to you where the people are, where the